via Facebook streaming, via YouTube streaming, and also via Skype online. Each one of you is welcome to this live streaming. We continuing with the sutras of Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, the breathing sutras relating to breathing. We have spoken on 3 sutras. The first one, when breath comes out, comes in, be very clear about the passage of the movement or the channel through which the breath movement happens. Breath movement happens between the nostrils and solar plexus. When the breath comes in, it reaches the solar plexus and there is a moment of turning, be aware. The second one, when it is taking a turn, it curves, be aware. The third technique was the be aware of the energyless, energy-filled center. Now this is the fourth technique. When breath is moving, it reaches when it is an upward movement, what does it mean? It means exhaling. And when the movement is downward, it is inhaling. The eternal wisdom is not knowledge. It is the fragrance of awakening. That is why in Upanishads, the student says, grant me that knowing which everything becomes known. What is that? It is awakening. When you are awakened, you do not need to study things one by one. Whatsoever you pick up, you immediately go deep to the very core of the message. That's where the true meaning remains. So this is a very often asked prayer. Teach me that, knowing which everything becomes known. So when through the movement of exhaling, breath is going out, it is all out. And when it is all out, it has stopped of itself. There is no movement. The breath that is exhaling, it has to come out of the system first. So it is either we can say it is all out, or it has stopped movement on its own. Or when all is down at the solar plexus, it is stopped. So there is a pause. These pauses are known as universal pause. And during this universal pause, a small self vanishes. This is difficult for the one who is impure, but it is difficult for everyone. You cannot practice it, but you can feel it sometimes suddenly. In certain moments, you can feel this. You are driving a car. All of a sudden, there is going to be an accident. In that moment, breathing stops completely. If it is out, it will remain out. If it is in, it will remain in. You cannot breathe in such emergency. You cannot afford it. Everything stops and departs. This is natural. What is this small self? Do you know who you are? Your identification is, I am Mr. Such and Such. I am a doctor. I am an Indian. I am an African. I am a Sufi. I am a professor at the university. These are all your identifications. I am a rich man. I drive a Mercedes Benz. I live in a posh locality. Your name, the bank balance, prestige, everything. In that moment, all this evaporates. When breath is all out, during the process of exhaling, it is not even a trace of it is within the system. Either it is all out, or you can say it has stopped on its own, or it is all down. This is a universal pause. One outside, when the breath is exhaled, this is known as cosmic center. The other is within you, the individual center. You are not aware of any of these centers. Only in the moments of accident or extreme emergency, the small self vanishes. Who you are, the name, the bank balance, prestige, everything just evaporates in those moments. Your car is just heading towards another car, another moment, and you will be no more. Death is inevitable. In this moment, there will be a pause. Even for the impure, there will be a pause. Suddenly breathing stops. If you can be aware at that moment, you can reach the goal. This is the essence of the sutra. So the masters create the situation. Zen monks have tried this method with the disciples in Japan. That is why their method seems to be weird, absurd, and strange. They have done so many inconceivable things. that one can hardly imagine. A master will throw someone out of the house. Suddenly the master will begin slapping the disciple without any rhythm or reason, without any cause. You were sitting with your master, everything was okay. You were just engaged in talks, and he begins to beat you in order to create the pause. If there is any cause for the pause, then the situation, the pause cannot be created. So sometimes the people do not understand the ways and means of the master. There is no cause. You have visited the master. All of a sudden, he starts saying things and you feel, what is wrong with this man? I have not done anything. I have now come and he is getting on. That is the word we use. He is getting on like a jackass or like a fool. You have not understood the master. If he says that this is what he is doing, he is not doing his job. He has to create situations. Transformation happens when situations are created and you are suddenly in those moments. Not that every situation that is created you will be aware. In some situation, all of a sudden you can be aware, and then transformation is possible. You are sitting, engaged in small talks. All of a sudden the master takes the stick and starts beating you. Sometimes the Sufis, Zen masters use the stick. Sufi masters are different. They may look at you, a glance. They may use a word, a statement. This is like a hitting. If you had abused the master and he started beating you, there is a casualty. Your mind understands it. It can understand. I did something wrong, I abused the master and he is beating me. Really, your mind was expecting it already. So there is no gap. The pause or the gap happens when something happens beyond your expectation. But remember, Zen masters will not beat you if you abuse him. He will simply laugh, because then laughter will become the pause. You abused him. That is what happens in normal day-to-day life. You abuse someone, the person puts forward his point and defends himself. Zen master will laugh. You will find, is it strange, is he mad or what? I have accused him, I have said something, and he is laughing. He is creating a pause. You were abusing him and you were saying nonsense things to him. You expected anger as manifestation out of him, but he starts laughing and dancing all of a sudden. Now what happened? Vivekananda came to Ramakrishna. He asked something. Ramakrishna started dancing. You will find this weird. And the dance or the laughing is sudden. And in that sudden moment, a pause is created. You cannot understand it. If you cannot understand something, that very moment mind stops. And when mind stops, breathing stops. Either way, if breathing stops, mind stops. If mind stops, breathing stops. This is the essence of this technique. You were approaching the master and you were feeling very good. You were thinking, now the master will be pleased. He will say, you have done great. And suddenly he takes a staff in his hand and he starts beating you. And not only beating, but he starts beating you mercilessly. Because Zen masters are merciless. He begins to beat you and you cannot understand what is this happening. That is why it is difficult for people to enter the Zen tradition. They like the master being slave to you, saying yes, yes, agreeing with you, because he needs a congregation of fools and idiots around him. Sufi Raghuvar Dayal used to say that I do not want the dog of the world around me. Means a person with ordinary consciousness. He begins to beat you and you cannot understand what is this happening, but in that moment mind stops. If you know the technique, you can attain to your inner self. There are many stories that someone attained Buddhahood because the teacher started suddenly beating him. You cannot understand it. Or throw the cold water on a cold winter night. What is this nonsense? How can one attain Buddhahood by being beaten by someone? Or being thrown out of the window by someone? Even if someone kills you, you cannot attain Buddhahood. But if you understand this technique deeply and clearly, then you will know it can happen. And it does happen. In the West, particularly in the last 30 to 40 years, Zen tradition has become very prevalent, a fashion, but it got prevalent as a fashion. But unless they know this technique, it is very difficult to understand Zen. They can imitate it, but imitation is of no use. Rather, it is dangerous. These are not things to be imitated spontaneously. It has to happen. The whole Zen technique is based on the fourth technique of Shiva, the universal pause. When the breath during the process of exhaling is or upward movement is all out, or it has stopped, or when it has reached all in and stopped. That is universal pause. But this is unfortunate. Now we will have to import Zen from Japan, because we have lost the entire tradition. We do not know it. Shiva is expert par excellence of this method. When he came to marry Devi with his marriage procession, the marriage procession was a congregation of people who were looking like with matted hair. Shiva himself had the matted hair and a skin wrapped around him, and the disciples have the garland of skulls around them, all kind of things. I recall when Sufi Brij Mohan Lal was to enter into the wedding, it was because his uncle, the master, said, "You have to get married." He had a long beard. So when the marriage procession reached the girl's house, there was a small talk among the girl's family that the boy has a beard. Lalaji heard all this. He went to Brij Mohan Lal and told him silently that I am taking this beard of yours for some time. There was so much love for his master. He did not say a second word. The barber was called and the beard was shaved before they could proceed for the further ceremonies. So Shiva had a long matted hair with skin wrapped around his lower extremities as the only garment, and his symbols, insignia, the snake. All these things were around him. Devi's father could not accept it and he totally disagreed. No father would permit the marriage to such a person. So we cannot say anything against Devi's father, he is right. No father would permit his daughter's marriage to Shiva. But Devi insisted, so he has to agree. Willingly, unwillingly, unhappily, but he agreed. Then came the marriage procession. It is said that the people began to run seeing Shiva and the intoxicated marriage ceremony. They were high and really behaving like psychedelic. Aldous Huxley named this elixir that these people had as somras because of Shiva. They were high, just dancing, screaming, laughing. The whole city fled. It must have felt at that moment the pause. Many times when I create a situation like this, it is missed. Any sudden, unexpected, unbelievable thing can create the pause for the impure. But for the pure, there is no such thing. For pure, the pause is always there. Many times, for the pure mind, breathing naturally stops. If your mind is pure, pure means there is no desire, there is no hankering, seeking anything. Silently pure, it is innocently pure. You can be sitting and suddenly your breath stops. Remember this. Mind needs breath movement. Mind moves faster when there is breathing. Every morning when I get up at 4 o'clock, I do my exercises. After the exercises, different type of exercises to create the dark energy. Then I go to water the plants outside. There is a moment. Or the breathing is so silent that you cannot feel it. Then I have to put the feet for the birds. The small birds and the pigeons come in the morning for their breakfast. Then take the shower, and after the shower get ready for the morning session. So when there is something unexpected, unbelievable things, all these things, sudden, unexpected, unbelievable things can create the pause for the impure. This process of healing. But for the pure, there is no such thing. For him, every moment is a pause. Because when I am doing the removing the garbage or watering the plants, there is no thought in my mind. There is no desire, there is no hankering. It is silent, innocently pure. You can be sitting and suddenly the breathing will stop. Mind moving fast needs a fast movement of the breath. That is why in anger, breath moves faster. In sex act, the breath will move even faster. That is why in Ayurvedic, a system of herbal medicine in India, it is said your life will be shortened if too much sex is allowed, because you will continuously be breathing fast. Your life will be shortened according to Ayurveda, because Ayurveda measures life in terms of breath movement. If your breathing is too fast, the life will be shortened. Modern medicine says that sex helps in blood circulation. Sex helps in relaxation. And those who suppress their sex will get into trouble, particularly the heart trouble. They are right, and Ayurveda is also right, but they seem to be both contradictory. But Ayurveda was invented almost 5,000 years ago. Every man was doing the labor. The life was labor oriented. So there was no need to relax. There was no need to create artificial devices for blood circulation. Blood was naturally circulating. But now, for those who are not doing much physical labor, sex is the only labor. That is why modern medicine is also right for the modern man. The work has become sedentary. He is not doing any physical exertion, so sex gives the exertion. The heart beats faster, heart beats more, the blood circulates faster, breathing becomes deep and goes to the center. So after sex act, you feel relaxed and you can fall into sleep easily. Freud says, Sigmund Freud says, sex is the only tranquilizer, at least for the modern man. In sex, breathing becomes faster. In anger, breathing becomes faster. In sex, mind is filled with desire, lust, impurity. When mind is pure, with no desires, no seeking, no motivation, you are not going anywhere, just remaining here and now like an innocent pool, no ripples, then breathing stops automatically. There is no need for it. On this path, the small self vanishes. The moment the individual I, the small I vanishes, the small self, then the Supreme Self manifests. Only this much for this morning. Tomorrow I'll continue it. The 4 sutras have finished. I will take certain queries in response in relation to these 4 techniques so far, and then the session will continue accordingly. Until then, take care and do have a pleasant day.